I ran an Airbnb cabin in a remote mountain area, far from the hustle and bustle of the city, with the hope of offering guests a peaceful experience with nature. However, an unusual booking turned my life into a terrifying nightmare. One day, I received a booking from a woman named Allison. She claimed to be looking for a secluded place, far away from everything, to spend a solitary weekend. Her messages were filled with strange words and unusual requests, but out of curiosity, I accepted the reservation. When Allison arrived, I noticed that her appearance was extremely peculiar. She was dressed in an old-fashioned black dress and wore a large black-brimmed hat that covered her face. Her eyes were deep and cold, as if they had never seen sunlight. She requested that I not disturb her during her stay, not ask her any questions, and simply maintain the quiet of the cabin. For the first 2 days of her stay, everything remained calm. I watched her from a distance, trying not to intrude. However, on the morning of the third day, as I prepared to check if she needed any assistance, I discovered that she had vanished. I searched the entire cabin but could find no trace of her. Her belongings were still there, but she had vanished as if by magic. I began to feel uneasy, but shortly after I heard a strange sound coming from the basement of the cabin. I opened the door to the basement, and the light was dim, but I saw an open door leading to a tunnel underground. Nervously, I descended into the tunnel, and as I followed its twists and turns, I heard more and more eerie sounds. When I reached the end of the tunnel, I witnessed a horrifying scene. Allison stood before an ancient altar, surrounded by strange symbols and candles. Behind her, there was a looming dark shadow, as if emerging from the depths of the earth. I tried to call out to her, but her eyes grew even colder, and her voice became low and raspy. She began chanting strange incantations, and the dark shadow seemed to become more substantial. Terrified, I turned and ran, sprinting along the tunnel until I reached the cabin again. I hastily packed my belongings and fled that dreadful place. Since then, I never rented out the cabin again. I have no idea who Allison was, how she disappeared, or what that terrifying dark shadow was. This experience left me deeply skeptical of the eerie occurrences that may lurk within Airbnb and the strange guests who might bring terror with them. I used to be an Airbnb host who loved traveling, managing a charming cottage in a quiet town. One day, I received a booking request from someone claiming to be a media producer. He stated that he was looking for a peaceful place to work on a project, and upon reviewing his profile, everything seemed normal. On the day of his arrival, I welcomed him, and he appeared entirely normal, friendly, and polite. He informed me that he intended to shoot a documentary inside the cottage, and I welcomed the idea as long as it didn't disturb the neighbors. Everything seemed fine. However, as time went on, I began to notice some strange occurrences. At night, I would often hear peculiar noises coming from inside the cottage. Sometimes I would be awakened by eerie whispers in the middle of the night, but when I checked, everything would be quiet again. I chalked it up to my own paranoia, given my penchant for reading horror stories. However, things took a darker turn. I began to notice that he would frequently leave the cottage late at night, carrying a peculiar toolbox with him. When I asked him about it, he always gave vague responses, claiming it was part of his filming experiment. I started to grow suspicious of his true intentions, but I lacked concrete evidence. A few days later, a neighbor called me to report that they had seen the tenant digging a hole late at night with peculiar symbols and drawing scatterette around the hole. I decided to investigate, and as I approached the hole, I was horrified. Inside the pit were several small coffins, each bearing the name of one of my past Airbnb guests. I immediately called the police, who arrived at the scene to investigate, but the tenant had mysteriously disappeared. Inside the cottage he had rented, the authorities discovered disturbing footage for a documentary, including evidence of illegal activities. It turned out that he was a dangerous madman who had used Airbnb guests as part of his sinister experiments, inscribing their names on small coffins. This terrifying Airbnb experience left an indelible mark on me, and I decided never to rent out my cottage again.